Hello and welcome to the Built On Air podcast. Built On Air is a regular podcast where we talk with everyday people and learn about the amazing things they are doing with Airtable. Today's podcast is sponsored by OpenSide, the leading solutions provider for Airtable customers. Check out openside.com to learn more about their products and services that can take your Airtable usage to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir to receive $20 towards any product purchase. On today's episode, we speak with Jon Letts, a man with a passion for organization and communication. Jon spent his college years focused on and sometimes giving presentations on the productivity triangle: calendar, email, and task lists. It was his belief that if these three things were kept in sync and organized, that nothing would go unnoticed. After discovering Airtable, he realized that there was something missing from the productivity triangle: people. Airtable allowed him to seamlessly add another layer to his life system by linking in each email, task, or calendar event to a person. In his words, Airtable and Zapier changed his life, a sentiment to which I'm sure many listeners will agree. Jon calls his system and subsequent Airtable Base Contuity, a name representative of his passion about creating and understanding connection. As it covers areas of his life such as relationships and thoughts, Jon equates it to a personal CRM. When he adds a contact to his iPhone, they're also added to his base. He uses a simple form to add what he calls Jots, turning the base into a bullet journal of sorts. By using Airtable's single and multi-select fields, he's able to categorize each jot into what he calls spaces of his life. All of this culminates into a color-coded chart showing what he spent time thinking about or doing over the last year. Jon shows us the chart and points out what stands out to him the most, such as how his friendship category shot way up after his recent move. There are tons of cool bells and whistles to Jon's base, which he has published to the Airtable universe. Check out the show notes for a link. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Built On Air, Jon.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure. So I figured we would just start with a little bit about your background and how you got into tech in general.
Okay, so tech has been sort of my entire life. When I was 10 years old, I built my first computer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we had my dad was a computer consultant. So we had a graveyard of broken PCs in our basement. So after taking a dozen of them or so apart, I rebuilt them all. And that was sort of the first foray into technology, but also this idea of like systems where, oh, this one part works. Oh, this one part works. And if I connect enough of them, being able to build something.
Mm-hmm. That's super, super cool. I can relate to that. My dad was a programmer as well. I mean, Didn't have computer parts laying around, but that's super, super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so when did you discover Airtable?
So right before Airtable, I was using Trello so my Airtable has sort of become the centralization location of my entire life. But before I was using Airtable, I had Trello. It was called the List of Jon. And it was like everything that I needed to do that day over the course of the next week, the next month, and then this idea of a master list.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was using this, it was like, all right, so Trello is good. I've got the Kanban view, which I really love. I can move things around. And through using that, I discovered Zapier, where, so if I move something here, I can have something crazy happen. Or if I make a note on my phone, something else can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it was probably a decade ago when I had like Trello connected with Zapier, connected with, there were a bunch of like life logger tools that were starting. So it could capture the music that I was playing. It could capture things that were on the shopping list. And it just sort of combined everything. And really what happened was I realized that the task management and all the note stuff that I was taking, it was missing the most important part, which I was giving like, when I was in college, I was giving presentations on productivity and organization and optimization. And it was like, if you keep track of your tasks, your calendar, and your email, so that productivity triangle, you're totally set. And what I realized was like, I don't really care that much about the productivity side of it, but I do really care about keeping all of the relationships
Mm-hmm.
and integrity. When I say I'm going to do something, I want to make sure I do it. So I discovered Airtable as sort of this database that I could use the Kanban view. It sort of did everything that Trello did, but had way more customization.
Mm-hmm.
So I started like, okay, so I'm going to just make one table called people, and then one table, and I called them Jots, Jots, because it wasn't just tasks. It was like anything on my mind, I'm just going to jot it down.
I like that.
And then the tasks, or the Jots, then I could just associate with a person. So I could see like our relationship, what was the thing that I said I would do? And I was trying to add as much context as possible. And Airtable was the easiest way to be able to do something with that.
That's super, super cool. And I love that the idea of the productivity triangle. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it's kind of become more of like a square now, because we have another layer in there with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's awesome. So you link each thought or jot to a person, so you can easily go back and see what you've accomplished or haven't.
Yeah, it was really cool. So a few months ago, I actually moved to San Francisco, hence some of the background.
Awesome.
And I was at the Internet Archive, and one of the people that was working there, he had created a system for himself, and he had this entire like organizational he just writes down everything about his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't quite realize this was a thing that other people did, but in my personal base, which I call Contuity, which is like con is together, and then tuity is either learn or continue. It's like once you meet somebody, you can't unmeet them. So it's the continuation of connection.
I love that. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I realized that like other people were doing it too. And being able to have a central place there was some there about it. So I started like sharing what I had built with other people and helping them get set up on it. And it's been really cool to have like, it's Airtable, but it also feels like there's this element of how I think about the world, and how people that are using it too, how they think about the world. It's not just the task, it's really about the relationship.
Exactly. And that's, I feel like Airtable is so conducive to providing that environment, just because it's like you could build your own whatever you want with it. It's so flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really, really cool. And I love, you had described it in your write-up for the show as a exo brain, which I thought was really, really clever. It like totally is, right? Like you put everything that you need to store into it, and
mm-hmm.
leave your own brain alone for a little bit.
Yeah, there's like, so Tiago Forte is somebody who has really pioneered a lot of this stuff using Evernote. Mm-hmm. And I tried really hard to use Evernote as my note-taking location, but it just didn't have enough context. I couldn't just take a note and tag a person to it and then also add a task to it or a deadline. Though I don't use the word deadlines generally. I call them sedlines. So everything that I jot down, it's the note, it has a person, there's a follow-up date. So it's like, when do I want to think about it again? So it can just appear on my calendar or at the top of the list or in a filtered view. Mm-hmm. And then the sedline, where it's, as I mentioned before, integrity. I said I was going to do something. When's the hard cutoff? If it's 6 months from now and I actually want to follow up a week from now, those are two really distinct dates that I want to be able to keep separate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you ever find that you have like, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing this for a long time. Like you have it kind of like down to a science.
Yeah.
Do you ever like go through periods where you like fall off and you kind of like forget to log something and then you have to catch back up with it?
Yes, I totally do that on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice. So since this quarantine started, I haven't been using it as much for all of my task management, relationship management that I had been before, but it's kind of become the ideal journaling tool. And I've taken it, so there's normal journaling, which is at the end of the day and the beginning of the day, really just like 10 minutes, sit down, just like brain dump. Mm-hmm. But I've started getting to this idea of microjournaling, where I have an idea or something that's on my mind, and just jot it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I do that for a while and I don't put a priority on it or say it's a follow-up, at the end of a week or a month or whatever time period I haven't been using it, I've got this really cool story of like what I thought was worth remembering, which is kind of like, it's like a journal, except it's more useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bullet journal in a way, like online.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually really cool. I don't think I've ever thought of using Airtable as that sort of solution. I find that really, really interesting. I've been a journaler for my entire life and haven't really recently, but I've got 10 years of stacks of books, and that would be really cool to have it in an Airtable environment.
I have like 15,000 plus notes of just micro notes along the day. But then what I thought was really cool, being able to like take Airtable technology just a little bit further, is I created one column, which is just the created date or the added date. So when I jot it down, and then I created a calendar view. And with that calendar view, now I can look at my calendar and say, oh, I met that person on Friday and we talked about like, who was that person? And I can actually look on my calendar because I've shared it, and I can scroll through and see where any of the notes are, or when they were created.
That's awesome. That's like really, really creative. And how much of that is automated? Like, are you adding every like bit and piece yourself, or I know you said when you add a contact in your phone, that gets pushed to Airtable.
Yeah. So I use IFT is the back end for a lot of stuff. So I have an iPhone anytime, and there's an IFT integration. So when a contact is created on iOS, it triggers a record being created in Airtable. So it saves the person's phone number, it saves the email address, just that basic information, but it also timestamps it. So I've got the timestamp of when it was created. Then I actually have another Zap that plugs into that one. So anytime a new person is created, it creates a record or a job. So then I have a person's phone numbers added, and anything I write in the notes field is saved. That creates a Jot, which then becomes an action of like, how did I meet that person? What was the thing that we talked about? Because I found that like meeting people, that first interaction is just incredibly important. And it's really hard to remember that, like that thing that we talked about 6 months ago. But I wanted to be more intentional. Like if I met somebody that I wanted to stay in touch with, I could jot down, we talked about this thing. And it's really fun being able to look back at the first interaction of like, I save a picture in there sometimes too. We talked about, so yeah, it's just incredible to be able to look at the beginning of the relationship and see how things have developed.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super, super cool. I know I just lost my train of thought. That's the second time I've done that today. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all.
It's been a long week. Yeah, that is really awesome. And what are you tracking? So your relationships with people and like what you're committing to do. Like, are you tracking any of your other personal data, like step count or heartbeat?
So I tried to get more into all of that stuff, and so my original background, so what I actually went to school for was accounting. So I was an auditor for a little bit there, and this idea that really stuck with me is it's immaterial. Like, what's the stuff that matters? What's the stuff that doesn't matter? If it doesn't matter, it's not worth remembering. So this idea of step counts, it would be cool to have.
Yeah.
But Airtable functionality right now, I'm not sure how I would include it in a way that would be useful. Where, like, don't get me wrong, I totally have this dream of like, based on the conversations I have, the people that I met with, I also track my food intake. So I know like what sort of things I ate, and then I track my mood, and that all correlates together. I can be like, okay, so I'm really happy when I talk with Michelle and Dan about this sort of stuff.
Yes.
Like, that'd be cool. And being able to plug in all the information from like an Aura Ring or the Health Kit from Apple, it would be pretty manual at this point. And I'm not quite sure that it's worth it, where what I'm really caring about is like the relationships.
Right.
So we talk about this thing. I say I want to check back in 6 months from now when you get back from vacation, or maybe I don't even say it. So this is one of my favorite use cases.
Yeah.
I have a conversation with my cousin Nick, and we chat, and he mentions that he's writing a book, or he was writing a song or a play at this point. And being able to say, cool, I would love to hear about how that goes. Because I have this system, I don't need to rely on him letting me know. I just jot down a quick note that I want to check back in 3 months. And then it appears in 3 months from now, and it's, hey Mick, how's the play coming along?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I have gotten some feedback of, John, that might be a little much. Isn't that a little bit creepy that you have notes on people? And I think about it, it's like, no, I care about the people I spend time with. I want to be a little bit more intentional. It's not weird that a salesperson uses Salesforce, but they're trying to close a deal. I just want to like maintain the relationships that I really care about, and over a long period of time, which is something that social media isn't doing right now.
Right.
So we've got the external news feed, scroll through Facebook, and then it's like, click, connected. But I can't create a reminder for myself, or I couldn't. So by using Airtable as notes and like I touch it, check in on people, I get that. I have my own news feed of what do I want to be following up on. And then if it's not alive in the moment, I don't have to.
Exactly.
But I really like this idea of like, do what's alive in the moment, and having this list of potential actions. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I struggle with that, like remembering, I mean, anything really. I mean, if I had a reminder that popped up and said, hey, remind you to ask your friend about the project she's working on, like that would be awesome. I mean, I always feel bad when I forget about things like that, and then it passes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like a jerk.
Yeah, and it definitely goes in waves, as you had brought up earlier. Some weeks it's like when I'm in networking mode, it's every conversation I'm going to remember, I'm going to follow up if it's for a specific work project. But then there are also times where it's much more casual, and I'm okay with forgetting. I'm more okay with forgetting now than when I first started doing this.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of therapeutic in a way as well. Like it kind of helps you to, get it out. And maybe sometimes you're like, I just don't need to today. So that's really, really cool. I've never spoken to anybody with that sort of use case of the relationship, kind of like a personal CRM, like how you described it.
And I would definitely, just starting out with it as a note-taking tool it's really nice, because there's the web form, which using Safari, you can save to your home screen. So I have a single click. It's actually the only item in my doc right now. Is I click this button and it opens up the web form, and it says jot. Okay, and it's just a long text field, and I can jot down anything that I want. I can link a person to it, which links to my entire contact list. And then I set a follow-up date. And if I have a follow-up date, then I've got conditional fields, which are brand new right now. And it also shows a duration of how long do I think it's going to take, and a set line of, is there a commitment to it? And I have been playing around. So there's this like, okay, did it increase my energy or decrease my energy? So for a little bit there, and I haven't really been using it as much, but I like the idea of it, is a connection score of like, how present did I feel in this conversation or connecting with this person? And then over a long period of time, being able to do a roll up or an average or something of the sort to see, like, on average, this person, I'm feeling this way, which is a little bit more of that life logging thing, but relationships.
Exactly. No, it's like bringing journaling into the 21st century, which I think is super, super cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I applaud you for it. I wish that, I mean, I would say I'd do it if I knew that I'd keep up with it. I'm just so bad at doing, like, actually getting myself to keep pushing those buttons, I think.
That's sort of why I like transitioning from the macro journaling to the micro journaling.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped being at the beginning and end of every day. It's
Mm-hmm.
in that moments where something comes up that I don't want to forget.
Right.
Is really nice. And then I actually have my other sort of fun trick that one of my previous roommates brought up. I synced my phone to a wireless keyboard, and then I just take it out and I don't look at my phone, and I can just type. And there's this like beautiful cathartic thing of like, all of these ideas are coming out and I don't see them. I can actually look at nature or or whatever's in front of me.
I love that. Like, really, like, that kind of just left me speechless for a second. Like, just stream of consciousness, literally. Don't even have to do you ever go back and reread it? I mean,
I have gone back and reread some, but most of them, everything that I jot down, I put in what I call a space and I tag it. So I've got like 70 plus spaces. And most of them just go in journal, and it's not a place that I look back in. But the ones that I do tag as a specific like piece of work, or so cooking is one of those, place to keep recipes. I have one that's called contemplation, where it's like things about meditation or what arose. And then I have one that's just like mental models of how do people think about certain stuff. I have a few hundred jots around that.
that's awesome. Really, I actually really like that idea a lot.
Okay, so one other journaling possibility that I thought has been really fun is so there's an application. I think it's not Pushcut. I think it may be Shortcut. Pushcut. Yeah, there's the Shortcuts app on the iPhone.
Right.
And there's a system that you can build using an IFT integration. So like if anything is sent to a specific email,
Mm-hmm.
then it gets saved in Airtable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can save attachments. So for a while there, I created I press a button on my home screen, which is a shortcut, and it opens up and it starts recording an audio file. And then I click it again and it saves it in email, and the email is pre-written to that specific email address, and I can write in whatever notes, then I press send. So for a really long time, every day when I would drive to and from work, I would just talk to myself for 10 minutes. So I have hundreds of these audio journals over the course of over a year of like what was going on that day. And it was really cool realizing like I had this sort of, so that was like just the exact same starting point. And I could sort of tell when I was saying it how my day was.
Yeah.
Because the good days I would be like, well, that was, and the bad days it was just a little bit slower. And it was a cool reflection. And I'm also really excited because now I have all of this audio that I could do something with. I could do sentiment analysis at some point to see how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's super, super creative as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
And that's another one that I really recommend for musicians or other people who are trying to figure out their lyrics. Mm-hmm. So being able to just press that button and then play something on guitar, and it's like, oh, I want to keep that, or I don't want to keep that, or maybe something magical will come out of my fingers. Maybe not, but like I can just record the entire thing and save it, and I know where it's going to go. It's time stamped. I can jot down notes about it. I can say it's related to music or something, and then I can find it later if I want it. But it's just a big brain dump.
Yeah. No, that's super, super, like, really interesting, very creative use of Airtable and of the Shortcuts app as well. I actually haven't been able to think of a good implementation for that new app on the iPhone, and that just gave me a bunch of ideas. So thank you. That's awesome.
Shortcut's a fun one, and then there's Pushcut on the other side that can give you a push notification. And one thing that I found with Airtable is using the application, if you save the URL on the desktop and you open it on your iPhone, you have to like build out the string in the correct way.
Right.
You can actually open up in the Airtable application to a specific view.
Right. Yes.
So being able to like, when I leave the house, I set a push cut, and it was, if I leave a certain radius from my house, it gives me a notification. It says, "It looks like you're on a walk. Is there anything that you want to say?"
That's awesome.
And it just like, it goes directly to that sort of thing.
Oh my goodness.
So trying to create all of these like nudges from that version of me that was like planning something or wanted to be creative, as opposed to being dependent on my natural response, like goal of, I'm just going to open Facebook, or I'm just going to open whatever the news feed is. I could prompt myself.
Like, brilliant, seriously. So it sounds like you're a very creative person. Are you a musician or yourself?
I feel almost uncomfortable saying it, and yes, definitely, for sure. I like playing. I like noodling.
Yeah.
Growing up, my dad would like read Radio Shack magazines and play grand piano.
Oh my gosh.
And like being able to create music and just like make things up is fun.
Absolutely. And I saw you do some work with Airtable on festival and conference volunteering.
Yes. Oh my God. Building out an Airtable database for an event is so much fun. Being able, like, okay, so we've got a schedule, but now we have a view. So it's like, there's the front end schedule, there's the back, like there's the tech schedule, and going virtual conferences. I can't imagine using anything other than Airtable for it. And then we have like you being able to use the blocks, send out a Twilio text message to all of the speakers that's like pre-filled. Your start time is here. We need you here. Here's your custom URL for the Zoom room that you need to be entering. So I just got off of, it was called Awaken Futures. And we had 50 speakers. We had 30 volunteers, and over the course of 2 days, and being able to like plug it all in and be able to automate some of that process, it just made it so much easier. And then like volunteer management, which is a completely different ball game. Like, okay, so we've got all these volunteers. We need to make sure that they have the right shifts based on their skill sets and their availability. And so being able to use the Airtable calendar view to color code things if they have enough shifts, and be able to move people around and like have multiple Airtables open at the same time on different screens so I can see all of the stuff. I don't know how people do it with Excel.
I don't do anything with Excel anymore. Yeah, that's how I found Airtable, was trying to make Excel do all these things it couldn't do.
Yeah, Airtable actually originally, the first major use case was when I was a product manager, and we were running a bunch of different pilot programs. The company was using Salesforce, but I didn't have access to Salesforce, and I didn't know how to use Salesforce. I wasn't an admin, so I like couldn't change all the things that I needed. So I created this Airtable base. That was actually like the original. It sort of happened at two different ways at the same time. One was my personal, the other was the professional of, okay, we have 25 different companies that we need to be maintaining relationships. We've got 3 or 4 different people at each of those different companies. If somebody calls me, I need to be able to check on the exact status of what's going on with their pilot program. So I made an Airtable base, and I could just like click on a person's profile or the company's profile, and it just, oh, here's all the information you need.
Right? Yeah, it's wonderful. And it's great. I like how you compared it to Salesforce, because it's like it gives you the power to be Salesforce and not for that, big price tag, which is great.
There are some, for one person, I can't imagine where Salesforce would be more useful. For a company, definitely. Being able to have a bunch of people on the same base, like my personal base has, I would say, most of my life. There are a lot of things that I probably wouldn't be comfortable with sharing to the greater public.
Right.
And it's like I have complete control over it. So the people that I've helped set up, they can completely customize it. So like if they primarily focus on recipes, being able to like modify it and just and like have individual like new columns to be able to store things is really cool, but still using this framework of just jot it down and then link that to other stuff.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Absolutely. So you mentioned blocks. Do you use blocks a lot, or did you just do it once for that for Twilio?
So I use blocks a pretty decent amount. So Twilio for sending out text messages, email for sending out mass emails, which is an absolute game changer. Though I tend to use Zapier for sending emails just if I need actual automation. But when I'm working on a conference and it's like live, I'm going to be in front of my computer. It's so much faster to just like draft up the email, create a new view, tag the right people, and send. I really like the web clipper. So one of the use cases, like, save this article. This was really impactful. I want to write something about this. Or this person added me on Facebook and that I wanted to like, I didn't say have their phone number, but we met. I'm going to jot down a note. So being able to use a web clipper, which pulls in the name of the person, because it's just the actual website, and then select an image, which is their picture. And Airtable now has the block, which is the name matcher. So you can actually play this game of, okay, this person or this person, who is, what's their name?
Yeah, that's actually super funny, right?
Mm-hmm. Which I started doing like a long time ago when I first built this. I called them name relations. So I made a separate table, and for every name I had an association. So Aaron was arrow. And I had this game of like, I imagine their face, and then I imagine an interaction with this idea and their face. So I got really good at memorizing names, but I feel like this block makes it easier.
That's awesome. No, that's really, really great. And I haven't been able to poke around at that at all, but I saw it the other day and was like, that's super interesting. It's not something I would have ever thought of.
Yeah. The charts are really cool. There's the visualization, which I can show shortly, of like all of the Jots that I've created over the course of years on a month-by-month basis. Being able to create an org chart of who are the people that I'm working with. Gantt charts, now that they have dependencies, I can like move stuff around, which is really nice. I've been creating dashboards of people submit forms, and I know when we get them. I know how many applications there are. I know how much is pending. I know like where they're coming from. And it's remarkable to be able to build a dashboard just in one application.
It really is. Yeah, I'm super, super impressed with all of the major improvements they've made recently. And I'm excited to see where they go with it in the future.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, great. I think it might now would be a great time if you want to share your screen. I'm excited to check out what you've been doing.
All right. Well, you were looking at a blank screen with all of the information that I need. And this is I call it the to prioritize screen, which is just all of the stuff that I could ever need to prioritize that has not, where the status is empty. So if you look at this is sort of my input off on the right here.
Oh, right.
So, what's on your mind? I had this idea. Okay, do I need to follow up? Is it something that's archived that I just like don't want to deal with? Or is it a list? Is it like a recipe? It's not an action item, but I want it to be like more prominent. Okay, so we're just going to not categorize it. Then I can put it in a space and then associate a person to it. And I'm going to follow up with that. Just jot it down.
All right.
So this is the one button that's on my dock. And then it redirects back to right there.
Nice.
Okay, so I had this idea. I'm going to associate it with myself. I'm going to say it's a follow-up item, and it's related to friendship. I want to follow up. I don't know when I get back from vacation, but I really, really want to follow up at this later point in time. And then it does go over like a decent amount further. So I can say like, oh, there's my phone number. Don't call me, please. Is there a next step? Do I need an attachment? When was it actually created? Or is it associated with a group? And then I have a filtered view where I can see all of the things and they appear as the filter becomes visible. So once today hits, it shows me all of the stuff for today.
Awesome.
So this is sort of where I spend most of my time, and it's one of the first things that I look at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and when I'm really in it. And I have a bunch of different views. Some of them aren't active anymore, but are based on previous projects that I am working on or was working on. Some are Kanban; they should always be empty. It's like, oh, here's a spot check. And some of them are just like pictures of things that I wanted to keep track of. I also have like the list of movies that I want to see, things that are associated to crafting. So whether I'm making candles or doing block printing or other things of that sort. So Jots is sort of central location. And then it goes to, this is a recent one. I actually did a financial planning block. So I made accounts. So I listed out every single account that I have with all of the different institutions and then where they get direct deposits from.
Awesome.
So where do they get direct deposits and on what day? So I have like a visualization using the org chart block of where is all of this money flowing? And then I also have financial planning, which is every single monthly expense. Which account is it coming from? On what day does it process? And what are the current balances? And I like doing it manually because it's this, like, I feel in touch with what's going on.
Right.
As opposed to Mint, where I seem to be doing fine, but I also don't know what Mint is using to make these decisions.
Right.
It's just, this isn't grocery shopping. What do you mean?
It's always trying to categorize my Dunkin' Donuts purchases as parts and service. So I'll get an alert at the end of the month. It's like, you spent an unusual amount of money on like your car this month. And I'm like, wait, what did I?
I have a car right now? What do you mean?
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then just going a little bit further over, people, anytime a contact is created, pushes it right in here. So I've got all of the contacts over the course of years. And I can click on somebody's profile to see what's going on, which I'm not going to do right now.
Understood.
There was also form responses. So something that I did a while ago was I did a personal reflection where I created a form for myself. John, let's keep growing, where I was actually looking for reflections of how I was showing up. And some people we had conversations around it, some people I sent the form to, but it was, what's your name? What are things that come to mind? What's a blind spot for me? Or what's a way that I could be improving or changing? And then also, what's your mailing address? So I sent this out to the people that I wanted direct feedback from, because if I'm going to do it, I may as well do it in Airtable.
Yep, absolutely.
And then now I have like a grid view of, here's a bunch of really important stuff about me that other people have told me that like I can't get away from in like a very positive way. I feel like feedback is the most important thing.
I love that. Really. Like, that's so cool. And I think one thing that's particularly hard for anybody is understanding themselves. And that kind of helps to inform that view of yourself by gathering how you're coming off to everybody else, I guess, right?
Yeah. And at that point in time, I was making a quick start guide. So it's like, if you want to work with John, here's some things you should know.
I love it.
So it was really good feedback for that. And then I have like groups. And so we have events, which is generally like invoice-based stuff. There are clients that I'm working with. And actually for a little while there, so IFT used to have a tool where if you press a button, you could jot down a note and press a button, and you could actually automatically save the geolocation.
Oh, that's cool.
So when I first started using Airtable, I would just jot down a note, press that button, and it would save the location. I would use the maps block. So I had a map of everything that I had jot down over the course of the first year or so that I was using it.
That's so cool.
Which was really cool because I was traveling around a bunch for work. So I had some stuff in Boston, which I was at the time, and then I had some stuff in California. There was things in Texas and Portland and Chicago, and it was like, oh, this is really interesting to be able to like browse through my life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So it's like kind of like how you can look at your photos on the iPhone at the map view, but it's for your thoughts and everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was developing this into an application for a while and then realized I could keep using Airtable and focus on other things right now. But having that locations, like I can still look for things by time. I can't look for things by location right now, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm sure someday we can, some tool will arise that will allow that to come back.
Yeah, no doubt. So then I would also keep track of like, what are the locations that I want to be visiting, coffee shops. The name relation is what I mentioned earlier of like air and arrow. So here are all of the people. Jessica. I guess I thought dress a cat was like an appropriate setup for that. And then of course, how many people are associated with that specific first name. So there's just a bunch of names.
I love it.
And then the next two are content. So it was like websites. I haven't been using that one in a while. And things. So what are the important things I need to keep track of? So when I lend a book to somebody or I lend somebody something, I actually create an item in the things table. And then I jot down a note saying, hey, I lent this thing to this person, link the person to it, and set a reminder to myself. So like, I can't really forget where things are.
That's a big one for me, especially. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And that's the perfect example is I'm like, I know I had that book 6 months ago, but it's not here anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tried to use this model. I call it HILT: humans, ideas, locations, and things over time.
I like it.
So if I could jot down a note, I've got the human, which is the people. I've got the idea, which is the actual text. I've got the location, which I can't really do anymore because I can't geotag it. And then the things. So are there specific things that are associated with it? I feel like over time, which is just jotting it down, I feel like is all the context that I'd really need to be able to remember what was so important at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's super, super impressive. No, really, like I'm kind of blown away. I really like I think anybody could benefit from employing just one of these things in their life.
Well, I think the place to start is so I have a base. It's called Contuity, Contuity, on the Airtable universe, awesome. And that's a starting point. But consider like what are the things to keep track of. But really, just starting to jot down notes is sort of the first thing, where Airtable allows you to start with almost nothing and then build it to encapsulate everything. Start with a journal and just like jot down notes. And then if you realize you want to add people to it and add the people table, and you can start doing other integrations so things automatically come in. If you realize that you need audio, build out that little shortcut audio app, like plugin. And if you want to do follow-ups or you want to look at it on the calendar, like you can add that too. So just like starting to use it, Airtable feels like the tool to be able to build an exo brain where you can just put sort of whatever you want and it'll be there. Exactly. Which is really nice. And it's this like comforting, because now that I know it's there, I feel more comfortable in my memory. I actually remember things better.
That's interesting.
Because I've written it down, so I've gotten a physical process there. And it like spatial memory is huge. So I could, when I was studying a lot, I would create like, oh, there's this formula that represents something. It's like on a shelf there's an airplane, and that airplane represents this formula. And by using this, I have a digital space, and I can almost visualize like what are the things that I'm jotting down based on the color that I use, for like what's the color that I use for the space.
Right.
And like having a visualization for it. Actually, let's see if the block is there. Sometimes takes quite a bit to load. Yeah, that is the only downside when you have thousands of records. Things do start to slow down.
Whoa.
So this is sort of a visualization on a monthly basis of how many things was I jotting down.
Oh, I
So
love
in the beginning, it was just like I wasn't categorizing things. It was more just a journal or a note-taking tool. Then I started building it out. And green is friendship, which is meeting people. So it was funny, like in May, I moved. So that's where the friendship spike jumped up, because I was like, I'm going to meet a bunch of people. And this blue is Contuity, which is the app that I was working on. So it was like much busier over like the course of here, and then it sort of tapered off when I was working at other companies. And it's a fun visualization. It really creates an end of the year review, which is nice.
Yeah. No, that looks great. And definitely it's awesome to look back and see the patterns that you've like unknowingly created throughout the last year, which is great.
Yeah. And being able to just thinking about notes or ideas as it's just a single record. Just put it in as a single record, and then over time it builds into this reflection of life, where looking at this to the viewers probably doesn't really mean too much, but to me it's like, oh, I remember moving to San Francisco. I remember when I first submitted all of those forms and was like sending things out to people. I remember when I was working on this really big project for my previous company. And that's really cool. It's like, I imagine this visualization of, if I saw somebody else's, it's like, it's a richness of what's being created.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like, I love this use of Airtable. That's really, really cool. So bravo.
I hope more people adopt it, because this feels like what we always dream technology could be. It's supporting us as humans to be more human, as opposed to buying our attention and time.
Exactly. Absolutely. Oh, that's a great outlook to have. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. That was wonderful. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And seriously, I think this is really great.
Thank you. It's been really wonderful sharing it. And I'm really excited for more people to use Airtable in this way.
Me too. Absolutely. And we'll be sure to put a link to the to your universe base in the show notes as well.
Perfect. And I'll make some updates, so keep an eye on that one. And there will be a few different versions of Contuity for folks to download, whether it's the very basic or looking for additional modules.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You as well.